Hey, this is James Alex from Slang, and you're watching the AU Review.
So for you being on the stage, what makes a great show for you in terms of the crowd, in terms of that experience being on the other side of it?
Yeah, that like connectivity thing when that happens, right? Because it's like, I mean, we're always going to play our guts out, right? 100, one person, 100 people, 1,000 people, whatever the deal might be. But it's like when that energy exchange sort of happens, and it's just like, right? Because I always say, like, it's not like our show, but it's like our show, you know? So it, like, to me, it takes that cyclical sort of thing to happen for it to really feel, I don't know, to feel like the thing that, you know, is the reason, like, we do it, you know? Yeah, for sure. So that I think that exchange of, like, energy and, like, that sing-along stuff, like, when that happens, I'm just like, oh, yeah, you know? And then you just start floating more than, like, playing. You're just, like, sort of just in it, right? I dig that.
Well, there's got to be some songs that must just kind of be almost routine, rhythmic in nature because you've played them so long. So to add those elements to it,
without a doubt, right? Yeah, it keeps things fresh and like, yeah. Because I used to wonder to myself, like, when you would look at bands like coming up that have played, like, you know, whatever song it might be, like whatever classic song is by a band, like, you've played it how many times, and like you still look like you're so on it when you do it. And that's what it is, right? You get lit up by, like, different energies every night, you know? Yeah. It's a pretty cool day job. Well, night job, but, you know.
Well, it depends where you're playing, I
suppose.
That's
fair enough, man.
What stage in the festival cycle you're in.
Fair enough.
You're sort of in a little bit of an awkward stage right now because, well, not really, because often a band's, like, in multiple year-long touring cycles. You guys have been prolific in the last few years. You're already about to bring out your next record. Yeah. Tell me a little bit about Loud Bastard Teenage Feelings.
Yeah. Well, we're definitely restless if we're idle, right? So it's like, as soon as we signed up to be a rock and roll band, it's like we want to do what a rock and roll band does, write records and tour. You know, and I don't want to live off of a record longer than it needs to be around. So yeah, like. So I wrote, like, Loud Bash while touring in Europe. You know, it's the first time I wrote a record, like, while on tour. I didn't think I could do that. You know, that's like a whole sort of different skill set. But I tapped into that, like, Kerouacian poet troubadour sort of thing, and it worked. You know, to my good surprise, it sort of paid off and worked. So yeah, so it was cool. So it was written that way, and then, like, lyrically, I sort of shifted. Like, LP1 was sort of like these songs about me and my friends, you know, and, like, kind of coming up in that. But, like, this one, because we were living literally on the road up until we went into the studio to make this record, I was writing about stories I was hearing from people who got turned on to us coming to see us off the first album. So it's like, first album was more like my stories. I think this one's more like theirs and me seeing myself in them, because there's this, like, sort of relatability that just sort of swirls around the whole thing between them and me as a writer, you know? But it's definitely written through their eyes, which I thought was, for me, a kind of a cool, challenging way to approach lyrics and stuff on this record.
Well, the title of the record really, I mean, you've mentioned that that's kind of how you see the band in many ways, as lyrically and musically, and I suppose that punk aesthetic comes through there. And it got me thinking a little bit about that idea, about that sort of aesthetic being such a teenage angst, you know, period, and you grew up, whether it was listening to, you know, for me it was like Green Day and Blink in the mid '90s, and and now someone like Blink is still kind of writing music like that. You know, is there a point where that sort of music loses relevance at all for the writer? Like when I hear, like, on the new Blink record talking about, like, 17-year-olds, I'm kind of going, now it's kind of creepy. Right.
Right. Fair enough. Yeah. And that's, I mean, I don't want to speak for them, right? For me as a writer, right, albeit, like, the title, lyrically, it doesn't stay trapped in that. You know, I'm definitely not like I definitely have no interest in Xeroxing anything I do. You know, that's, like, sort of an easy thing to sort of fall into. Well, this thing worked before, let's try it again. Like, I just have, like, no interest in that. Like, the whole thing for you know, for us and for me specifically as a writer is, like, I just want to reflect honestly what I'm feeling in a moment, whether it's, you know, the label's going to be happy with it or not, right? It's like, I don't want to try to sell, like, smoke mirrors or some plasticized version of what we were, you know, just to, like, make sure record sales stay up. I want it to be about the work that's being made, you know? So it's like, yeah, I mean, like titling it that to me, like I was asked once in an interview, like if you had to describe what Beach Slang sounded like in one line, what would you say? And I was like, oh, loud bash of teenage feelings, you know? But like, I meant that in kind of like that way, you know, when it's like, it's that first point in life where you're sort of starting to tap into like freedoms and risk taking and sort of figuring it all out, you know? It's like, I think that's a really great like trigger point, but it's not like the end of that. Like I still feel like that way now, you know what I mean? But certainly not writing about 17-year-olds, you know? Yeah.
It's I think it's just interesting with music in general. I think that there's this kind of idea that, you know, when a band releases their first couple of records, it's in a certain period of their life, and then it's like, how are they still recreating that 30, 40 years down the track and still trying to go back to that? It's like, well, you shouldn't be doing that. You should be trying to
That's right.
take what's now.
Yeah, for sure. Like, absolutely, I agree. Like, and if you look at it, like, historically, even like Beach Boys or Beatles, you know, you take those early records, like the way the Replacements did it, like that sort of loose punk angst in the beginning up to like the end, where stuff got more crafted in their songwriting and stuff. Like, I think, like, you know, and those are the bands I sort of dig on and draw sort of inspiration from. That whole like remaking the hit. For like, you know, a duration of a career, to me just kind of feels like you're just sort of phoning it in.
Well, when you hear an album like with the Beatles early in their career, and then to think that they went on to create Revolver, it's
right.
Just...
Like you think about that, it's just like what a blueprint to follow as like as a musician or an artist or a writer or whatever it is you do. You know, it's just like it's pretty amazing that there's like a fearlessness in that, I suppose. You know.
Well, I look forward to hearing what your Revolver sounds like somewhere down the track.
Right on, man.
And but in the meantime, very excited to hear the next record. I love the single.
Thank you, man.
So, and I imagine that's a pretty good taste of
I think so. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. But you know, hopefully some surprises in there as well. But